Hello, welcome to The Bench, our final Benchwarmers of the summer of 2019, and a lot of high school football in this edition. Tom Nieman along with Jandy Man, Jason Andera, who covers high school football with a joy and a passion like nobody else. It's about time, Jandy.
It is about time, and I spend my summers researching and just talking about the recruiting and just getting my rankings together and stuff that normal people shouldn't be doing in the middle of June.
So. All right, and you'll have your rankings coming out, do a lot of previews. There's a preview show coming up on the 21st. It'll include some of the teams in South Dakota and North Dakota. But again, August 23rd is the start date for high school football in the Dakotas. Let's talk about some of the individuals that people are going to be able to go out and see on these high school teams. And has it gotten better and better and better, or are we just making that up, or are we just noticing more now? But there's so many kids from the Dakotas that go to FCS schools, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, USD, UND, and become really good players.
You know, we're getting to the end of this decade, and I kind of go by decades. And a couple decades ago, South Dakota wasn't looked at all for football. I mean, you would hardly ever get players that would go to that big-time level. And then a decade ago, we saw a few more, Greenway back 20 years ago, and then we saw in the last decade the Farniaks, and then we saw Nate Gary, and we saw a few others go to Nebraska. And now people realize there's a lot of talent here, and the talent is getting better. And I talked to Curtis Riggs, who runs his combine, and said that this year, this next couple of years, are some of the best talent that he's seen come through as far as football goes in a long time.
One of your favorite guys right now is going to Nebraska. Let's take a look at some of these kids you're talking about, and we've talked a lot about the polar bear from Chamberlain.
Yeah, this guy is, he's a man. Look at this guy.
Nash Hutmaker is his name, and you'll hear a lot about him.
Yeah, he's one of the most famous guys in the state because he's so good at wrestling. The number one wrestler. He is unbelievable at the heavyweight level, and then he's running people down.
Look at that man.
And he doesn't get a lot of talk during the season because he plays on Chamberlain, and Chamberlain hasn't advanced in the playoffs very far. But if you watch his tape here on Huddle, he is all after the quarterback. He's playing that nose guard position, doesn't get a lot of love there, but I tell you what, he puts a ton of pressure on, and he is one of the best talents we've ever seen. A 6'4", he plays at about 300 pounds. I mean, he is college ready right now, and he's still got another year of football in him.
All right, his senior year, Chamberlain, coming up. He's going to Nebraska. And then you talk about North Dakota State, South Dakota State being FCS powerhouses, right below the FBS level. This is really, really good college football. And there's a handful of guys that are going to both of those schools.
Yeah, and some of them are scholarship guys, and some of them are walk-ons. We used to see a lot more walk-ons, and I think now they're realizing, like, the talent around here is pretty good, and you have to go get these guys if you want to keep them. And so now we've seen some scholarship offers, in particular Gray Zabel. He was a guy that both South Dakota State and North Dakota State was after. He's gone to some camps in Iowa and stuff. But Gray Zabel's a two-sport player. So first of all, he had to decide baseball or football. He made that decision to take the football route. And as you can see, he's a big boy. He is about 6'6", and he is a center, a true center, which you don't see very often, centers who can really move and who are really big like him. And that's why NDSU was all over him. So he took trips to NDSU, USD, SDSU pretty much in the same week. But NDSU gave that first offer to him, and he said that meant a lot, that they believed in him to give him that first offer. He went there, he got the chills, the tingles, all the trophies that he saw out there, and he fell in love and decided to become a Bison.
Yeah, one that got away from the South Dakota schools and ends up at North Dakota State, Gray Zabel from Pierre. Who is, there was one that was just announced in the last couple of days. Mitch Eichacker, I think I'm saying that right, from Sioux Falls Lincoln, is going to South Dakota State. There's some twins at Sioux Falls Roosevelt this year, the Kusler boys, that are going to go to South Dakota State, and we'll get to see them in another year of high school football.
Yeah, all three of those guys, defensive monsters. But Mitch Eichacker from Lincoln, he's a guy who gets after quarterbacks. He can go from that defensive end position, and they think they can put a little bit more weight on him. Right now, playing at about 6'4", 220, 225. By the time he's a senior, maybe in the 230s, but he'll probably get up to the 250, 260 range and be a tweener between defensive end and linebacker. And he's got that speed, but he's one of those guys, when he got to camp at SDSU, he was just so impressive on the field by what he did that the SDSU guys didn't let him get away. And they found a guy from Sioux Falls Lincoln to continue that path on defense. And then you talked about the Kuslers. The defense is just totally loaded with guys from South Dakota, and I think Adam Kusler and Aaron Kusler will both find a way to play linebacker. It's kind of unique because you're bringing two guys in that are so similar that play the same position at linebacker. It's sometimes tough to bring in two guys so close together. You wouldn't normally do that at any other position, but with these guys, I mean, these guys are very, very skilled and big boys.
South Dakota State stacking up on a lot of really good
Yeah.
players from the state of South Dakota. Just mention a couple more here. Jesse Hastings from Mount Vernon Plankinton is going to be a walk-on at North Dakota State. Max Balloon from Redfield, another small school in South Dakota, is going to the Jackrabbits at SDSU. There's one other kid that's going to be a junior, I believe, from Sioux Falls, Washington, that's getting more probably big-time offers than anybody else we've seen in a long time.
Randolph Kapai. This guy came kind of out of nowhere. I mean, he played as a sophomore on this Washington defense, and he's all over the field. His hips are so loose. He's so athletic. And then all of a sudden, he didn't even go to any camps or anything. He got 4-star rating on all these recruiting sites. He doesn't even know how he got it because he started getting offers. Oregon, everybody's in on him. Of course,
Iowa,
Big Ten
Nebraska,
schools, all those schools are ready to pick this guy up. And yeah, he's still got 2 more years of football to play at the high school level.
All right, Jackson Hilton from Brandon Valley is another young kid that's going to be a junior that we think is going to be really good. But the point is, no matter what the class in South Dakota, there's going to be somebody great to go watch.
Yeah, and we're talking D1 guys here. There's a lot of other good kids. I mean, Caden Verley is a guy you want to go watch from Canton this year. There's 9-man guys, Stanley Haskins Jr. I mean, we need some more time to talk about this, Tom. That's why we're going to have a preview coming up next week.
All right, exactly. There's some team outlooks coming up next. Jandy's put together a different way to look at the teams in South Dakota, and there's a thing called 7-on-7 football that has become a huge deal to us here at Midco Sports Network, and we'll talk about that. More high school football coming up.
Benchwarmers on Midco Sports Network is presented by Avera Orthopedics.
Welcome back with the man for high school football in South Dakota, Jason Andera, Jandy Pants. For the past, 4 or 5 years, you have gotten involved in a 7-on-7 high school football event called Rise Above the Region. What is this?
Yeah, and it's really cool. I mean, a lot of teams will do different team camps. Some of them have running, some of them don't. Some of them are 7-on-7 like the one that we covered. And Curtis Riggs does a phenomenal job of putting this tournament together. And I think what sets his team camp apart from the others is just the level of competition. The level of teams that are here are fantastic, and it's all done in one day. And that's what we got to check out in late July is kind of our first taste of high school football from teams all over the area.
Some people scoff at 7-on-7 and say, why are you even doing this? It's just the wide receivers and the quarterbacks out there goofing around. There's no linemen, but what can you gain from this? But you can get a little bit out of it as a team, and it's also a great way to get a look early at some of these teams from North Dakota and South Dakota.
Especially when you have new quarterbacks. I mean, it's so important for them to get their reps and to get a timing down with any receivers that they have. But really, surprising to me is the defensive coaches love it more than anybody because they get to learn communication on how they're going to cover their 4 or 5 receiver sets. And that's huge for defenses to work on communication because they get such limited practice time as high school teams compared to any college or pro teams.
All right, Mandan was here from North Dakota. Had Fargo South came down. You see Harrisburg there, some of the Sioux Falls schools, but this is a good way for you. And this is kind of a different high school preview that you have coming up. You've put all this together into kind of a user-friendly 1-hour special that's going to air on August 21st, and you're going to take a look at some of these teams as well as what went on in the 7-on-7.
Yeah, so we meld this tournament where they play pool play and bracket play, and we mix that into a complete preview for both North and South Dakota high school football. So not only are we looking at how these teams did, we're looking at who are going to be the top teams in each class, in the rankings, who are going to be the best players and the best prospects coming up. We'll have a list of top players from each class. We'll have a top prospects segment. We'll have a lot of different talks and outlooks with different coaches from across the region. So even if you don't have a team in the race here in the 7-on-7, you're going to get a lot out of it. In fact, we renamed it the South Dakota high school preview or North Dakota high school football previews, just because we know it affects so many more people than the people that were just in that 7-on-7 event.
And this came down to Brandon Valley and Sioux Falls Roosevelt that are going to be probably the top 2 teams in South Dakota in the big schools when we get to it.
And we've seen a little bit of history from this 7-on-7 tournament that teams that do well here usually do pretty well in the regular season. Gregory won it a couple years ago, and then they went on to win it all. Washington's won it before, and they've gone on to the Dome many times. So I think this year, I think it's a good indication that Brandon Valley and Roosevelt are pretty good, and they kick it off right away. First week of the season, play against each other.
Thomas Skolton from Brandon Valley, their quarterback's going to be really good. Brady Dannenbring will be the quarterback for Sioux Falls Roosevelt. And again, getting excited to get out and see these guys. So the season starts August 23rd. 2 days before that, on Wednesday, August 21st, is the Jandy's is high school football preview night on Midco Sports Network on the 21st.
Exactly. We're really excited about that hour. It'll be fun.
And then Varsity Sports Live will get started on August 30th. Jandy and I here in South Dakota, Jody Norstead and his guys up in North Dakota as we get going in high school football here in just a couple of weeks. All right, not only football for Jason Andera, but you've been working on some volleyball as well, and there's a special coming up on that as we get into the high school season in South Dakota. More on that when we come back on Benchwarmers. Welcome back with Jason Andera, our high school football guru at Midco Sports Network, but you are getting into some volleyball as well in the last couple of years and really got into it this summer. We talked about our high school football preview with Jason coming up on August 21st. That same night, you will have a 1-hour special on high school volleyball in the Dakotas.
It's pretty exciting. This is the first time we've done a preview special on volleyball, and it's taken us a few years to get there, but we just think that they deserve the attention. They've got a lot of great teams, a lot of great players, and we've gotten better and better at covering it over the last couple of years thanks to Darren Tipton for the little push. But it is really, really cool that we're going to be able to break it all down.
And we talked about so many high school football players in the Dakotas are turning into really good college players. That's some really big-time programs. That is especially true in volleyball this year. Talk about some of these names.
In South Dakota, for instance, there might be 7 players right now that are D1 or going to be D1 at some point. But a couple of those are big-time players. Pegron Kong out of Sioux Falls, Washington is going to Louisville. Katie Fernholtz out of Miller just committed to K-State. And in North Dakota, there's a girl named Lauren Ware who has not made her decision yet, but she's back-to-back champion in both volleyball and basketball. She wants to play volleyball and basketball at the college level. And you know what? Colleges are letting her do it, and that doesn't happen all the time, Tom. A lot of them want to make you specialize in one sport or the other, but this is a phenomenal talent out of Century.
Yeah, very unfortunately, Ware was injured this summer, and we're going to see how her last year goes at Bismarck Century. But maybe, I mean, she's the prospect right now.
I don't think people really understand how good Lauren Ware is. She's 6'5". She can move on defense. She dominates on the inside. She can take the shot outside. This is basketball-wise. And volleyball-wise, her team has won 4 straight titles, and she's been a huge part of that over the last 3 years. She gets a 98 rating on her scout. I mean, her scouting ESPN number or whatever out of 100. She's a top shelf 4-star recruit in both sports. So we're talking Arizona, UCLA, Tennessee, Minnesota is her final 4 schools that she's trying to decide between.
Yeah, volleyball on the rise as well in South Dakota. And again, on the 21st, you're going to take us through some individual stuff like that you and Darren, there's some evaluations they did at this camp this summer. So you'll go through that and some team previews as well on the 21st.
It's really cool. Yeah, the Future 50, the 50 best players in South Dakota. We'll have a feature of that. We've got the Summer Slam tournament, which was similar to the Riggs tournament in football, where they played team camp championships all the way down. Watertown and O'Gorman made the finals out of the South Dakota bracket this year. We'll have highlights of that all the way through. And then, of course, previews, rankings, interviews with coaches, features on the best players, an hour full of volleyball action. Can't wait for that.
All right, brother. August 21st with the high school volleyball preview with Jason Andera, and also that same night on Wednesday, August 21st, high school football preview with the man that covers high school sports here at Midco Sports Network.
You got it.
Appreciate it, buddy. We'll see you this fall. When we come back, we're going to take you out to Colorado. We got a story on a former South Dakota State University basketball player who is now a golf entertainer, but is also one of the biggest hitters in the world on the golf course as he competes on the World Long Drive Tour. Welcome back. We were out in Colorado recently for a Midco Sports Magazine story on a young man named Josh Cassaday. Josh played basketball at South Dakota State University, and now he hits a golf ball for a living. He's one of the longest hitters in the world as a participant on the World Long Drive Tour. And when he's not doing that, he works as a golf entertainer and a trick shot artist for corporate golf outings. And that's where we caught up with him while he was working a tournament in Golden, Colorado. Talk about, just briefly, your time playing basketball at South Dakota State. You're there for 3 years. It wasn't that long ago. Does it seem like that long ago?
You know, it seems like it was just yesterday. I mean, I was there from 2007 to 2010, right as I graduated high school, and right as we were joining the Summit League. You know, I was a part of a couple of those teams, and you know, it was fantastic. We had some great quality athletes and players that I got to play with, and still friends to this day. You know, basketball is my one true love. You know, I started playing when I was 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
You know, played it for the majority of my life, so I still love it. There's still a place for it. But hitting this little white golf ball is it's taking its place right now.
Yeah.
Basketball will come full circle for sure. I played a little bit after I got done with college in some leagues around Denver and things like that. But right now it's all golf.
All right. Are you a golfer?
You know, I like to think that I'm a golfer. My scores will probably tell you otherwise. Being able to hit the ball 400 yards comes with its pros and cons.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's 400 yards straight down the middle, it's great. I feel like a fantastic golfer. I should be on the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
But when it goes 400 yards to the right or to the left, you know, I try to scramble.
WLD, World Long Drive, and you got to the semis in the World Championships last year. Is that right?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. 2018. You know, that was such a fun ride to make it there on that level, hitting against those caliber hitters. You know, you really kind of know and understand that you have a place and you can compete with the best in the world when you show up there and perform like that. So it was a lot of fun being there in Thackerville, Oklahoma, hitting under the lights and actually hitting a couple good balls. So it was a great time.
And what's the longest you've ever hit it in competition?
So my longest in competition at Mesquite, Nevada was 467
Really?
yards.
Okay.
Carried close to 400 and then rolled out the 67 yards.
And we kind of blew past this, but how did you get to know that you could hit the ball like this?
You know, I have no idea. To be quite honest with you, I have no idea. It's one of those things, and it's the story for most guys. They'll be able to hit the ball far. They'll be the longest guy in their foursome, and then they'll show up to a regional and have some success. You really never know how far you can truly hit it until you hit against other long drivers. And I was fortunate enough to show up to a regional out in Salt Lake City at the Rockwell Blast and almost qualified for Worlds at my first event, and I had no idea what I was doing. And that's, you know, you see a lot of guys in the sport now that come in, had no idea that they could, you know, perform on that level, and they're qualifying for Worlds, and they're making it to tour events and making some money doing it. I mean, typically in a tour event, we'll hit between 10 and 15 times before you actually see us on TV.
Okay.
So we're hitting 8 balls in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hitting a lot of golf balls going full speed for multiple days. And so you got to warm up, perform, cool down, get a good night's sleep, come back the next day. So it's a marathon for sure.
But that gets pumping. That gets you pumping. That's your competition that you've always had with basketball, and you've kind of carried that in now to doing this?
Exactly. And I think it's the competitive nature of the sport. It's the adrenaline rush. It's all that I was searching for that I had with basketball, that you stop playing at the collegiate level. You try to play professionally, and you know, obviously that didn't work out in my cards, but then you're searching for that competitive spirit, that competitive nature. And that's what Long Drive was for me. It's all adrenaline, it's full speed, there's music playing, it's crazy.
It is pretty cool. Do you have to qualify during the year, or can you go qualify for the Worlds and get to the World Championships like you did last year?
You know, fortunately, because I finished 2 years ago, I finished top 16, so I was exempt last year.
Okay.
And then because I made it to the semifinals, I'm exempt for 2 years.
All right.
So I don't have to go through the grind that some of those guys have to go through to make it to Worlds.
All right. Looking forward to seeing you then, man.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks a lot. Great kid, still a great athlete at 30 years old as he has made the transition from basketball to the World Long Drive Tour. And we'll have more on Josh in a Midco Magazine story coming up later this winter on Midco Sports Magazine. So much live football coming up on Midco Sports Network. We'll talk about that when we come back on Benchwarmers.
Benchwarmers on Midco Sports Network is presented by Andera Orthopedics.
Welcome back. That's our show here on Benchwarmers for 2019. Huge thanks to our show sponsor, Andera Health, and thanks to our guests that we've had here on the show this summer. Todd Heitkamp, our fishing guy from Dakota Angler. Lee Taylor from the South Dakota Attack AAU basketball program. John Krogstrand from the High School Activities Association in South Dakota. Kelly Pfeiffer, our favorite college basketball referee from Mitchell, South Dakota. Nate Gary from the Philadelphia Eagles. Colton St. Clair talking hockey, former UND guy. Larry Plucker from the Sioux Falls Pickleball Club. Corey Mitchell from Sioux Falls Lacrosse. U.S. Senator John Thune. We had Ryan Powell check in from the Summit League. Darren Tipton with Adrenaline Volleyball. Chris Johnson, University of Sioux Falls men's basketball and beleaguered Twins fan, joined us as well. Danny Sinkson shared some time from Sioux Falls Golf. Lauren Cornet from Andera Health. Chad Barman from Sioux Empire Baseball Association. And Matt Zimmer from Argus Leader Media. Our thanks to everybody that joined us here on the show this year. We will see you next summer on Benchwarmers. It's time for live football this fall on Midco Sports Network, starting Thursday, August 29th with Dakota Wesleyan at Dakota State. That'll be our first game of the season. And then high school football on Friday, August 30th with West Fargo Cheyenne at Bismarck High. More college football on Saturday the 31st. South Dakota and North Dakota at home. Check it all out. We'll see you there.